Okay, good morning, good afternoon. Yesterday and day before yesterday, we had a class on cervix followed by uterus. Today we'll be talking about the ovary. Ovary are the female gonadal organs. Okay, female gonads. So before going into the topic proper, we'll just have a brief review about the normal structure of the ovary. What's the ovary? Ovaries are paired bean-shaped structures hanging from either tube. What is this tube? The fallopian tube. By a mesentery called as mesoovarium, the lateral suspensory ligament, and the ovarian ligament. So basically, three ligaments hang the ovary from the side of the fimbrial end of the tube or fallopian tube. They are the mesoovarium, the lateral suspensory ligament, and the ovarian ligament. Each ovary measures about 2.5 to 5 centimeters in length and has a breadth of 1.5 to 3 centimeters and has a width of around 1.5 centimeters. Coming to the histology, the ovary consists of outer covering of coelomic epithelium, and on cut section it has an outer cortex and an inner medulla. So the coelomic epithelium is primarily composed of cuboidal epithelial cells. Now coming to the ovary, the main parts of the ovary, as I already told you, outer covering of coelomic epithelium, which is the cuboidal epithelium. Then an outer cortex, anywhere there is an outer cortex and an inner medulla. And this is the hilum. Okay. Cortex is very important because it is the outermost layer of the ovary and it is composed of stroma and the developing follicles. Okay. This is the medulla. Medulla is the middle portion of the ovary, intervening middle portion between the hilum and the cortex. It is composed of stroma, blood vessels, and the nerves. Hilum is the place where the blood vessels and the nerves enter the parenchyma of the ovary. Okay, so cortex contains the stroma and the follicles. Medulla consists of blood vessels and nerves, and hilum is the place where the blood vessels and the nerves enter into the ovary. Already told you, the coelomic epithelium is the cuboidal epithelium. Coming to the cortex, the most important structures of the ovary are the follicles, and they lie in the cortex. Each follicle consists of a central germ cells which are surrounded by the gonadal stroma. This stroma consists of granulosa cells. Basically, the granulosa is the supporting structure for the germ cells. Okay, this granulosa is primarily avascular. So then, how does it has to continue? It draws its nutrition from the theca. This theca again has two layers, that is the theca interna and the theca externa. Now once these follicles mature, they are called as Graafian follicles. Okay, these Graafian follicles, they rupture and they release the ovum. This step is called as the ovulation. Okay. Now the medulla has the connective tissue of the ovary, and it has blood vessels and nerve cells. Now coming to the pathology part. First, when we deal with the ovary, the infections and all routine infections are present. Coming to the topic proper, they are the non-neoplastic and functional cysts. These can be grouped under follicular and luteal cysts. Normally, follicles and the corpus luteum, they do not exceed around 2 centimeters. And their diameter is more than 2 centimeters. They are called as, that is when you call them as cysts. Cystic follicle, they arise from the unruptured Graafian follicle. They usually multiple and range up to 2 centimeters. If the size is more than 2 centimeters, you call them as follicular cysts. Okay, so there are two entities: cystic follicle and follicular cysts. Cystic follicles, when it is less than below 2 centimeters, more than 2 centimeters, you call them as follicular cysts. There is another entity called as luteal cysts. What are luteal cysts? They are same as the cystic, as in this follicular cystic follicles, but the difference is the rim of the cyst, the outer the inner rim is lined by luteinized cells. Okay, they are formed by rupture and sealing up of corpus hemorrhagicum. Okay, now coming to the PCOD, that is the polycystic ovarian disease or polycystic ovarian syndrome. It is previously called as Steen-Leventhal syndrome. It's basically an endocrine disorder and it is characterized by hyperandrogenism, menstrual abnormalities, polycystic ovaries, chronic ovulation. Because of chronic ovulation, there is decreased fertility. Okay. Endocrine disorder characterized by hyperandrogenism, that is increased androgen, menstrual abnormalities, multiple cysts in the ovaries, chronic anovulation, and leading to decreased fertility. Okay, it is usually associated with obesity, type 2 diabetes mellitus, and atherosclerosis. It is marked by a dysregulation of enzymes that are involved in the androgen biosynthesis. So, as a result, there is increased androgen production in the females. Androgen is basically a male hormone, right? There is also increased insulin resistance and there is altered adipose tissue metabolism. So, grossly, there are numerous cystic follicles or follicular cysts which enlarge the ovary. And why is important? Because they are women with PCOD are known to be at increased risk for endometrial hyperplasias and endometrial cancers, because in addition to increased androgen, free estrogen levels are also increased. Okay. The gross features, there is bilateral and enlargement of the ovaries to at least twice the normal size. The thickening of the capsule, which is gray white to pearly white in color. Multiple follicular cysts measuring around 2 to 9 meters in diameter are crowded in the cortex. Okay, the cortex contains, see, you're able to appreciate numerous cysts in the surface. Okay. Now coming to the ovarian tumors. So ovary is the third most common site of primary malignancy of the female genital tract, followed by first in place is the cervix, then the uterus. Okay. So etiology, some people have, scientists have recognized some risk factors. They've seen that there is a high instance of ovarian tumors in nulliparous women. Nulliparous means parity is children. Women with no children, it is seen that there are a higher instance of ovarian tumors. Hereditary, this BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes are seen to be associated with ovarian tumors. BRCA1 and BRCA2 are breast cancer genes. Okay. In addition to breast cancer, they are also associated with ovarian tumors. Some of the complex genetic syndromes have an increased occurrence of incidence of ovarian tumors. That's the Lynch syndrome, Hughes-Jervich syndrome, gonadal dysgenesis with gonadoblastoma, and nevoid basal cell carcinoma with ovarian fibromas. Now, clinical features are usually what happens. Most ovarian tumors are discovered when they are sufficiently large size, because so as to cause any abdominal discomfort or distension. So it's rarely diagnosed when they are small in size. Okay? Usually when they are diagnosed, they are increased to sufficiently large size. Because of this large size, what happens? They compress the surrounding structures. What are the surrounding structures? Maybe the intestines or the below can compress on the urinary bladder. So it causes urinary and gastrointestinal tract disturbances. Another thing is ascites is a common feature of ovarian tumors, which may be can be seen even in the benign or malignant ovarian tumors. And some of the tumors, they may secrete hormones. Now coming to the ovarian tumors classification, it's a bit confusing, but once you understand the concept, you can easily know the classification. So classification of ovarian tumors is based mostly on usually on the probable tissue of origin. Okay. So tumors of the ovary, ultimately they arise from one of the three ovarian parts. What are the parts? Surface epithelium, germ cells, or the stroma. Okay. If they arise from the epithelium, they are called as surface epithelial tumors. Germ cells, they are called as germ cell tumors. Stroma, sex cord stromal tumors. Miscellaneous, it can involve any other, the lymphomas, all other stuff, they are included in the miscellaneous tumors. Metastatic, that is when from tumors from other sites, they metastasize to the ovary, they are called as metastatic ovarian tumors. Okay? So, surface epithelial, germ cell, sex cord tumor. These are primary tumors of the ovary. See, I'll just tell you here. This is the ovary. This is the surface epithelium. This is the germ cell in the follicle. And this is the stroma. Okay. So, those arising from the surface epithelium, they are called as surface epithelial tumors. Here, age group affected is usually around 20 years of age. Different types in surface epithelium includes serous tumors, mucinous tumors, endometrioid tumors, clear cell tumors, Brenner tumor, and cystadenofibroma. Okay, these are the ones that arise from the surface epithelium. And they arise from the germ cells. They are called, these include the teratomas, the dysgerminomas, endodermal sinus tumor, and the choriocarcinomas. Okay, so surface epithelial, germ cell over. Now the sex cord stromal tumors. Okay, they are fibromas, thecal tumors, and sertolinated cell tumors. Okay, so surface epithelial, germ cell, and sex cord stromal. This is the WHO histological classification of ovarian tumors. Surface epithelial, serous, mucinous, endometrioid, clear cell, transitional cell, and these are other groups. Further, these are again divided into serous tumors. Individual entities again divided into benign, malignant, and in between there is something called as the borderline. Okay, transitional tumors. They include the Brenner tumor and the transitional cell carcinoma. Next, the sex cord stromal tumors. Granulosa stromal cell tumors, granulosa cell tumors, and thecofibroma group. These are included in the granulosa stromal tumor. Sertoli stromal cell tumors, sertoli cell tumor. Then there is gyneandroblastoma and lipid cell tumors. Okay, you just at least try to remember the classification and the names which are included in each entity. Okay. Germ cell tumors are again important for you. They are dysgerminoma, yolk sac tumor, embryonal carcinoma, polyembryoma, choriocarcinoma, and the teratomas. Teratomas, the again include immature, mature, monodermal, and mixed germs. Okay. Next come the gestational trophoblastic disease and metastatic. Okay. Now coming to the pathogenesis of ovarian tumors. Though ovarian cancer are clinically considered as one disease, different morphological types exist. And each morphological type has its own pathogenesis, its own biological course, and associated with some particular specific molecular changes. Now, pathogenesis of surface epithelial tumors. Okay, these are the serous, mucinous, and Brenner and all that. Okay, so histological subtypes have different precursor and molecular changes. Low grade carcinomas, then they usually are preceded by some precursor stage. Okay, in the common mutation in the low grade carcinomas are KRAS and BRAF. Just remember the names KRAS, BRAF. Okay, Mucinous carcinoma, it is associated with KRAS and P53. Okay. P53, I've already told you about the role of P53 in the cervical cancers, right? In the cervical cancer, this E6 protein, it inactivates P53. Okay. The pathogenesis of cervical cancer, carcinoma. Okay. Mucinous carcinoma is also associated with P53 and KRAS. This endometrioid carcinomas, the forerunner for this group is the endometriosis. What is endometriosis? It is occurrence of endometrial tissue outside the uterus. Okay, ovary is a common site of endometriosis. So, for endometrioid cancers to occur in the ovary, you need to have a foci of endometriosis, and in this, hyperplasias occur, which further give rise to endometrioid carcinomas. Okay. Mutations associated with the endometrioid cancers in the ovary are microsatellite instability and mutations in beta-catenin and p-tail. Okay. High-grade endometrioid carcinomas, they are associated with mutation P53, PIK3CA, and BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations. Okay. Then again, the clear cell carcinoma, they also have to be preceded by the foci of endometriosis. And there is loss of heterozygosity, P10 and PIK3CA amplification. Okay. Of these, the important ones are the serous and the mucinous. Okay. KRAS and BRAF, KRAS and P53. At least try to remember these two entities. Then coming to the, we've done with the surface epithelial tumors. Now the ovarian germ cell tumors. One of the proposed pathogenesis is parthenogenic activation of the oocyte. Oocyte, when activated by unknown mechanisms, creates a progeny of embryonal cells, which can undergo malignant transformation, giving rise to germ cell tumors. When the activated cell gives rise to malignant embryonal cell, it is called as embryonal carcinoma. Embryonal cell means it is very primitive. You're not able to distinguish what type of cell it is. Okay, so when the cell which arose as a malignant embryonal cell, it is called as embryonal carcinoma. These malignant embryonal cells may further result in yolk sac tumor. When the differentiation is towards yolk sac type of cell, then you call it as yolk sac tumor. And they can also differentiate into varied teratomas. What is a teratoma? Teratoma is a tumor arising. It arises from all the three germ layers. What are the three germ layers? Ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. Okay. Malignant proliferation of ovarian germ cell, dysgerminoma. These are various pathogenesis. One is parthenogenic activation of oocyte, malignant transformation of ovarian germ cell. Dysgerminoma pathogenesis, malignant one can be due to malignant transformation of oocyte, or other germ cell tumors may also arise by transformation of dysgerminoma cells into malignant embryonal cells. Otherwise, the combined pathway, mixed germ cell tumors are derived from combination of various germ cell tumor elements derived from oocyte activation or malignant transformation. Okay, can be by so two mechanisms. One is by oocyte activation, and other is by malignant transformation. Okay. Now coming to the surface epithelial stroma tumors. Tumors that are derived from the surface epithelium form the largest group of ovarian tumors, constituting about 60 to 70% of the ovarian tumors and 90% of malignant tumors. Okay. Mainly three types are present. These are the serous, the mucinous, and the endometrioid type. Frequently, they have a cystic component. This cystic component may further be uniloculated or multiloculated. What do you mean by uni or multiloculated? We call it as uniloculated when there only single chamber is present, or single cavity is present. We call it as multiloculated when the single cystic space is divided into different parts by intervening fibrous septa. Okay. Serous mucinous endometrioid. They may also differentiate along the urothelium. Urothelium is the epithelium lining the urinary bladder. So, when it is differentiated along the urothelium, it is called as Brenner tumor. And if it differentiates along mesonephroid pattern, it forms the clear cell adenocarcinoma. So, usually the components of this tumors may include cystic areas, fibrous areas, or a combination of cystic and fibrous areas. If only cystic areas are present, call them as cyst adenomas. Adenoma means glands, right? So glands with the cystic areas, cyst adenomas. Cyst adenofibroma, that is cystic component, glandular component, and the fibrous component. Predominantly fibrous areas, adenofibromas. Cystadenomas, adenofibromas, and cystadenofibromas. Depending on the aggressiveness, the surface epithelial tumors are further divided into three groups. Clearly benign, clearly malignant, and there is an in-between group called as the borderline. Okay? Coming to the, when you call it as a clearly benign, when the tumor, it is lined by a single layer. The lining layer is only single. It is lined by a single layer of well-oriented columnar epithelium. Okay. Papillary projections, if present, are lined by bland epithelium without any invasion into the fibrovascular stomata. Papillary projections means the finger-like protrusions. Okay. They're clearly benign, lined by single layer of well-oriented columnar epithelium, and papillary projections are rare and benign. But if at all they are present, they are lined by gland epithelium without any invasion. Okay, clearly malignant. When you call the tumor as clearly malignant, when the epithelium has anaplastic epithelial component. Okay, anaplasia. The features of malignancy are seen in the epithelial cells. And there is multi-layer stratification of the lining epithelium, and there is loss of polarity combined with stromal invasion. Okay, anaplastic epithelial component, stratification of multi-layering, loss of polarity, and stromal invasion. When they are present, you call them as clearly malignant. Obviously, they have a co-prognosis. Now, here comes the borderline. When you call them as borderline, they have some morphological features of malignancy, that is apparent detachment of cellular clusters from site of origin, but with absence of stromal invasion. Okay. Stratification of epithelium is present, but there is maintenance of polarity, moderate nuclear abnormality, and some degree of mitotic activity. All these are present, but not to the extent that you classify them as clearly malignant. So it is between the benign and malignant. Doubtfully malignant or doubtfully benign. These cases you include them under the borderline. So on cross-examination, the risk of malignancy increases as a function of when the solid component, I've told you have seen, no, there is usually it includes a cystic part. The more cystic it is, the more benign it may come out as more benign. Okay, when the amount of solid growth is more, then the risk of malignancy also increases. So, amount of solid epithelial growth. When there are more papillary projections, there is a chance of increased malignancy. And when the thickened tumor lining, when the tumor lining the cyst is thickened, then you should look carefully for the malignancy. So the three factors that decide whether it's malignant or benign are solid growth, papillary projections, and thickened wall. Okay. So usually the tumors may be small or they may be massive, filling the entire pelvis, and solid necrotic fibril tissues depicting necrosis. Okay. Now, based on the embryological pathway by which Mullerian ducts are formed, they may be serous, endometrioid, or mucinous. Serous is the epithelium lining the normal fallopian tube. Endometrioid is epithelium of the endometrium, and mucinous is the epithelium present in the cervix. Okay. So we have seen serous epithelial tumors, mucinous epithelial tumors, and also endometrioid epithelial tumors, surface epithelial tumors. Such tumors, they occur predominantly in the ovary because coelomic epithelium is incorporated in the ovarian cortex to form mesothelial inclusion cysts. Okay. Clinical features, they usually tumors of the adults. Benign and borderline, they occur in the premenopausal stage. They occur in the premenopausal, usually they occur in the premenopausal women. Whereas the malignant tumors, they occur in the peri and postmenopausal age. And malignant tumors, they usually 70% of them have an extravariant spread at the time of diagnosis. Coming to the signs and symptoms, I told you they are vague, non-specific, with the pelvic discomfort, abdominal fullness, GI disturbances, and urinary disturbances. Okay. Features of when they are very huge and they are twisted, features of torsion or rupture may be seen, that is severe pain, shock, ascites, all that. They can be seen when there are features of rupture and torsion. CA125. This is a high molecular weight glycoprotein which is being used as a marker for ovarian tumors, but though not very specific, it has its uses. Usually, its levels are raised in ovarian tumors. Okay, CA125. CA125. It is a high molecular weight glycoprotein. Now, coming to the first entity in the serous epithelial tumors, serous tumor. They are so called because of the presence of clear and watery serous fluid in the cyst. Okay, and usually they occur in the women of in the 2nd to 5th decade. So between 20 to 50 years, they can occur. And serous tumors, their lining epithelium is tubal-like. That is the cuboidal or columnar epithelium. Pathogenesis, it is associated with nulliparity, family history, and heritable mutations. What are the heritable mutations? We've seen BRCA1 and BRCA2. They are associated with serous carcinoma. Okay, nulliparity, family history, and BRCA1, BRCA2 mutations. Benign, on gross examination, these serous tumors, that is the serous cystadenomas, they may be unilocular and multilocular, and once you cut open, you find a clear fluid within them, clear watery fluid. Okay, and the external surface is smooth. And when adenofibroma, that is when there is a fibrous part, it appears as solid and with full, it is solid with some scattered small cysts between the solid areas. Okay, cystadenoma, adenofibroma, cystadenofibroма. Okay, cystadenofibroma is uni or multilocular with solid area. We have seen three parts, three components: cystic, call it as cystadenoma, fibrous, fibroadenoma, cystadeno-fibroadenoma. That is both cystic and fibrous. Histopathology examination, it shows the ciliated or non-ciliated columnar epithelium with basal nuclei. Abundant fibrous stroma in the fibromas are present, and borderline growth can be seen in 5 to 10% of the cases. Now coming to the borderline tumors, they are large and multilocular, bilateral in 35 to 40% of the tumors. Coarse papillary excrescences from cyst lining or external surface. That means papillary excrescences are nothing but papillary projections. Okay, can be seen either from the surface of the ovary or inside of the ovary. Okay. HP, complex papillary and glandular pattern is seen along with the secondary cyst formation. Epithelial stratification. There's the true papillae. True papillae means they have a central fibrovascular core. Okay. Finger-like projections lined by multi-layered epithelium with a central fibrovascular core is seen. There is a low-grade nuclear atypia and scattered mitosis. Usually there is no diffuse stromal invasion is seen. Microinvasion may be noted in some cases. So borderline tumors usually have complex papillary and glandular pattern. True papillae were lined by multiple layers of epithelium with a central fibrovascular core with low-grade nuclear atypia and scattered mitosis, and stromal invasion may be micro-invasion is seen with no diffuse stromal invasion. Okay. Now coming to the serous carcinoma, there are large, often bilateral cystic papillary solid patterns are seen. They invade the ovarian capsule and grow on the surface. Okay, so there is an associated diffuse infiltration of the fibrotic stroma. Okay, papillae lined by stratified low columnar cells, solid nests or sheets are seen in high-grade tumors. Papillae are present with stratification and anaplasia, loss of polarity. All malignant cell features are seen in the cells lining the cyst. Okay, or the tumor. There is marked nuclear atypia and increased mitosis. Cytogenetics, they usually show BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations. Some of the serous tumors, they may show Samoma bodies. Okay. So this is a borderline serous cystadenoma. There is a cavity with, these are all the papillary growths. Okay, you are able to see these are all different papillary growths. These are all papillary excrescences. Okay. Here cystadenocarcinoma. So this is all cystic mass. It is filled with solid growth. Okay. And this is a borderline mass. Okay. And here are the different growth on the surface of the ovary. This is a normal benign papillary serous cystadenoma. Here, papillae lined by single layer of columnar cell. Okay. Now this is the borderline. You are able to appreciate the difference. Here, there is increase in thickness of the lining papillae. These are looking normal and bland, but here you are able to see the increased complexity. Increased architectural complexity also is seen. See, here it's a simple papillae, simple race thing lined by single papillae. But here you are able to see this is a papillae showing branching. Okay, so there is structural complexity as well. Epithelial stratification is seen, multi-layering with increased architectural complexity. Okay. This is cystadenocarcinoma. This is the papillae and this is showing invasion into the adjacent stroma. This is complex micropapillary growth, a low-grade micropapillary. See, these are all small into the surrounding stroma. Okay. Mucinous tumor, they are less common than the serous. They predominantly contain mucin. There is an entity called as pseudomyxoma peritoni, which I will deal later. These are mucinous tumor, metastatic mucinous tumor that are associated with mucinous ascites. Usually, the ascites is collection of fluid in the peritoneal cavity, right? The fluid that is collected in the peritoneal cavity is mucinous, mucin. That is when we call it as pseudomyxoma peritoni. Histogenesis is my metaplasia that differentiates along the endocervical type of epithelium. Coming to the benign mucinous tumor, that is a mucinous cystadenoma. They usually unilateral, grow up to 10 centimeter size, and they can be uni or multilocular. And once you cut them open, they are filled with thick mucin. Okay. HPA examination. The lining epithelium is columnar or endocervical or gastric type with the basal nuclei and a clear cytoplasm. Usually intestinal type also can be present in some lesions. Intestinal type of epithelium. Okay. This is the mucinous cystadenoma. Okay. See, you're able to appreciate the glistening mucus, the shiny mucus in the cyst. Okay. This is all. This here you can see plug-like shining material, thick mucus. Okay. See here it is. The lining is mucin filled columnar, tall columnar epithelium filled with mucin. Okay. Borderline mucin, there can be unilateral, bilateral. The cut section are multilocular. HP usually there are two types. Okay. It can be lined by intestinal type borderline mucinous tumors or endocervical or mullerian mucinous serum. Endocervical type borderline mucinous tumors. Sorry, I typed it wrong. It is EBM. Okay. So two types. Just remember, intestinal type of epithelium and endocervical type of epithelium. Intestinal tract usually that is the from the extra ovarian spread. That is I've told you. I will discuss about the pseudomyxoma peritoni. It is progressive deposits of mucin with strips of bland epithelium and fibrous organization dissects the omentum of the peritoneum. That dissects the omentum of peritoneum. See, you're able to. This is the mucus. Okay. Stratification is same, right? Stratification with 1, 2, 3, 3 layers of epithelia are seen in this particular papillae, right? See, this is all cavities filled with small cavities filled with mucin. Okay. Architectural complexity seen. See, it is thrown into different finger-like projections with a central fibrovascular core lined by multiple layers of epithelium. Columnar epithelium. Then coming to the mucinous carcinoma. They are large multilocular cystic tumors with areas of hemorrhage and necrosis. Okay. They usually bilateral and show surface growth in about 10% of the cases. Histopathology, there are crowding of glands and cysts, complex, irregular infoldings into the stroma. Intestinal type of epithelium, predominance in the mucinous type of carcinoma. They stratify in 2 or more layers with large vesicular nuclei with prominent nucleoli and increased mitotic activity. Okay. Stratification with large vesicular nuclei with prominent nuclei. See, you are able to appreciate the vesicular nuclei with prominent nucleoli. See this particular cell. Okay. Vesicular nucleus. Vesicular means empty, something that is empty, like looking empty, with a prominent nucleoli. It's clearing, right? Clear nuclei with prominent nucleoli. Okay. Stratification with it's showing all the features of malignancy. Okay. This is showing see, there is diffuse invasion into the. These are all seeding of the stroma with the epithelial cells, malignant epithelial cells. Okay. The endometrioid tumors, they are mostly malignant and they have close resemblance to the endometrioid adenocarcinoma. Endometrioid adenocarcinoma is seen in the uterus, right? They are type 1 and type 2. Type 1 are the endometrioid adenocarcinomas of the uterus, right? Type 1 or type 2. Okay? They have close resemblance to the endometrioid adenocarcinomas. So, because the name itself indicates endometrioid, so they differentiate towards the endometrial type of epithelium. Now, other entity is the clear cell. They are almost always malignant and they have close resemblance to the renal adenocarcinoma. Okay, they are frequently associated with endometriosis. They are large, unilateral, partly solid and partly cystic tumors. HPE shows different tubules, glands, papillae, cysts and solid sheets of tumor cells resembling cells of renal cell carcinoma. That is the RCC is the renal cell carcinoma. Brenner tumor, they are uncommon ovarian tumors, mostly benign. They are due to the metaplastic transformation into transitional epithelium. That is the epithelium of the urinary bladder. Okay. On graph, they are solid yellow-gray firm masses of variable sizes. Histopathology, you see nests and columns of epithelial cells scattered in the fibrostome. Okay. Today we'll stop with this, and next class is on Monday. We'll continue with the germ cells on Monday, and Monday I'll just give you some questions. You just try to answer them. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Have a wonderful day ahead. Bye bye.